When I was a kid, I was very used to describing myself or having other people describe me as creative. When I got into college and the work world, I thought that creativity had dried up. Turns out, I just needed some time and space to be able to think. Here's what I'm learning in my process from recovering from overwork and burnout and viewing myself as not as creative as the people around me. Inspiration thrives with three things. The first is awe and wonder. If there is something around you that brings you to just marvel at it, that is going to be centering and inspiring to you. It may not give you, an answer to a specific problem, maybe not problem-solving creativity, but it will sort of light a fire inside of you that brings you into contact with your creative side. The second is novelty. Learning about something new or seeing something new can spark ideas. The third is time. And I think this is actually the most important one. You don't necessarily have to be experiencing awe or wonder or even novelty if you have the time to see the world around you in a new way. Basically, if you want to have truly creative solutions in your day-to-day life, whether that's in work or life, you're going to have to give yourself time to think. And that time to think can't just be a vacation. Vacations are great, especially for helping you reset, but 1 week of having a bunch of time to think is not going to sustain you through the whole year. You need time, preferably on a daily basis, but a weekly basis will do too, where it is carved out for you just to sit and think about things. Think about your life, think about a work project that's giving you trouble, think about interpersonal dynamics that you may need to speak into or help. Whatever your problem is that you want to infuse some creativity into, whether that is a work problem or a life problem, give yourself time to think about it. And I'm not even sure the word problem is actually the word I should be using, because ideally, you have this time built in, and so you are thinking about things and sort of able to thoughtfully consider all the things that could happen before they become a problem, right? Ideally, with my business, when I give myself time to think, I am thinking through, okay, how do I want to grow in the future? And I am taking steps toward growing in that way instead of just kind of doing things as they come up. And then at some point getting to a point where I go, oh man, I really need to take some time and think about this and kind of sort it out because it's way too complicated and way too sporadic. And we're not growing in the direction that I want to be growing. And I don't even know what direction that is. Like ideally, I am starting with that intention and going from there. But even if you haven't been allowing yourself time to think, starting by giving yourself even 15 or 30 minutes a week where you can just sit there with nothing to do except think is going to be amazing for your creativity. Okay, so let's talk about how to do this, because this really is crucial for long-term creativity that you can sustain. I'm going to go ahead and give you some tips in a little bit about how to get creative ideas in like the really short term if you needed the idea like yesterday. But I really want to start with this because it's so important. It's so important that we are coming from a place of realizing that our creative spark needs to be nourished and fed if we want to be able to draw on it, and that it needs time, that you need time to think in order to be able to come up with the ideas that you need for your work and your life. So let's start by talking about how to do this, especially if you are not used to doing it. The first thing is schedule some time. Like I said, it can be 15 minutes, it can be an hour, it can be a couple of hours, whatever your schedule allows or whatever you're comfortable doing at first, schedule that. If you're not used to doing this, 15 minutes may seem like an eternity. But after you've done it for a little while, you may find yourself wanting to increase it. And so I'd recommend, if you're really busy and you feel like you don't have time for this, just find 15 minutes where you can sit down and think about something that you really want to solve every single week, and you'll be surprised at the results. Now, when I say schedule some time to think, you don't have to necessarily just be sitting in your chair going like, You can be. If that's how you like to think, that is perfect. If you'd rather have a more guided approach, if you like to journal, go ahead and journal. I personally don't like to journal, but I do keep something called an idea diary, where when I have an idea that I want to keep track of, I just write it down. It's a little sketchbook type thing. And that has been an amazing resource for me to be able to refer to later. You can pull out your phone and put it in a Google Doc. You can put it on sticky notes. Just do whatever you need to do to make sure that you are in a reflective mood and you are able to let your thoughts dwell on the things that you want to be thinking about, but also make sure that you're not choosing a method that is so rigid that you can't think about anything else. Sometimes the best ideas come to us when we let our minds wander. Another thing that I recommend that you also schedule 15 minutes or 30 minutes for every week is something that allows you to be absorbed in a task or get into that flow state. Adam Grant has a great TED Talk on this, and I will link to that in the description. But because the best ideas often come to you when you are not trying your hardest to get them, it's really important that you have something that you are doing regularly that just allows your mind to completely focus on it in a flow state so that your subconscious can be working in the background on the things that matter to you. So for me, some of these things are painting and drawing. I do it as a hobby. I don't like sell my art, or I'm not a professional, but it really is centering for me. It's something I can kind of do. It involves a little bit of thought. It involves being absorbed. But if I'm doing that and I, have some instrumental music on or something that isn't occupying my attention while I'm doing it, my mind can also wander. And I have some of my best ideas when I'm doing that. If you're the type of person who has your best ideas in the shower, it's probably because that's the only time in your day where you get into this little bit of a flow state where you're kind of doing things that you've done all your life automatically, and your mind is free to just wander. Another thing that you can consider doing, and I wouldn't do this weekly because it is a bigger commitment, but if there's something like that that totally absorbs you and gets you stuck in the present moment, make sure that you make time for that. For me, that is concerts. I realized that about a year ago, and so since then, my husband and I make an effort to go to concerts when we can. For my husband, it's seeing a movie inside a movie theater and that experiencing that surround sound and the big screen. He just can take all of it in, and it feels like he is right there and totally absorbed in the moment. That is a little bit different from flow because you are experiencing something head on, but it is also a really good break from your brain if you are used to worrying and stressing over every little thing throughout the day. So going to things like concerts for me or movies for my husband may seem kind of counterintuitive when we're talking about creativity. After all, we're being completely absorbed in this other creative work that we had nothing to do with. But again, creativity is all about getting out of the ruts and the habits and the routines that we get ourselves into. And so if you can be really grounded in the present moment and you are used to being preoccupied, then that is going to be really, really powerful for you and for your creative life. The last concert that we went to, it was an amazing experience. I had a fun time. And then the entire drive home, I just kept thinking of all of these ideas and thoughts. And some of them were for my business. Some of them were for my life. Some of them were just thoughts that I was like, wow, I've never thought about that before. Knowing those things that really inspire you and making sure that you have those habitually in your life is going to mean that you have an overflow of creative ideas. You'll have so many ideas you won't have to use all of them. But if you don't have these habits in your life for creating moments that allow you to be inspired, you're going to be constantly trying to make that creativity happen in a way that will stress you out and will probably lead to less creative ideas than you would have had otherwise. Okay, now let's totally switch gears and talk about the short term. Let's say you need an idea now. You needed it yesterday. You needed it last week. What do you do to get that idea? Here are some of the top ways that you can do it without resorting to just doing the same old thing or doing something that might be sort of redundant or not really creative, okay? Because there's a difference between needing to solve a problem and wanting to solve a problem creatively. And if for you want to solve the problem creatively because you know that what you have done in the past hasn't been what you wanted or it hasn't actually solved the problem long term, then that's what this is for. There are times where you feel like you need an idea, and because of work or timing or just what's going on in your life or whatever, you have to just go ahead and keep doing what you've been doing. That is totally fine. But if you are in the situation where you need the creative idea, someone is asking it of you, or the thing that you used to do is just not working anymore, that's what this is for. I have 5 ideas here. I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible, so hold on tight. 1, host a brainstorm session. This means bringing other people into your creative process. As an introvert, I can kind of feel my body tensing up a little bit at that idea. It can be hard to trust other people. It can be hard to navigate those interpersonal dynamics. But honestly, if you need ideas fast, asking other people is one of the quickest ways to get those ideas. You can have one other person at your brainstorming session. I probably wouldn't go to more than 5 because then just everybody has an opinion and it gets really crowded and hard to work through all the possibilities. But host a brainstorming session. Ask people to help you figure out some creative solutions to your idea. You can use some of the other methods that we're going to cover in this video during the brainstorming session, like the idea wheel or using a whiteboard or the sticky notes. But the big thing here is get other people involved so that you can bounce ideas off of them. They can give you some ideas that will maybe spark other ideas in you, and so that you can get the ball rolling faster. It's also just a good idea to have other people involved in the process, different people with different backgrounds, different ideas, different cultures, because your end product of whatever it is you're working on, whether it's, you need to figure out a better way to get groceries, or you need to solve this huge problem at work, is going to be better with diverse perspective. Okay, number 2, use an idea wheel or make a sticky note wall or use a whiteboard. Now, these are all kind of different ways that you can do the same thing, but basically how this works is you have your problem or the goal you're trying to reach, and then you come up with a bunch of ideas about how to get there. With a wheel, you sort of start with the idea or the problem at the center, and then you draw spokes out from there with possible solutions or things relating to that, and then more things relating to that. With sticky notes, you just kind of get out a pad of sticky notes and you write the idea, you put it on the wall, you write the idea, you put it on the wall. There's no judgment in any of these methods. Do not judge yourself. If you're doing it with somebody else, there is no criticism of people's ideas. You just write it as fast as you can. You put it on the wall, you get the next one, you put it on the wall. I forgot to say at the beginning, but you set a timer, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, however much time you have, and you just go ahead and do this exercise. You can do a very similar thing with a whiteboard, just write it all down with a dry erase marker. The key with this method, at least what I've found, is that first of all, you cannot be critical of the ideas that you are putting out there. And second of all, you want to go ahead and just trace all the rabbit trails and all the threads. Normally, if you are in a meeting, you don't want to do that. You want to keep the discussion centered and focused. But if you are trying to come up with a creative idea, especially by yourself or as part of a brainstorming session, follow all the threads. It may seem random to you, but if you associate it with the problem in some way, or if someone else does, there may be a connection there that you're not yet seeing totally, and that connection could be the key to your next creative idea. The third option is to ask an expert. Now, this may not actually be the most creative idea, but if what you're doing for whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve, say you have a really sticky work problem and you just haven't been able to figure it out. Say, people aren't responding to their emails and you're just not sure how to get them to respond to their emails. Asking an expert can help you come up with a solution that is going to work for you. And maybe it's not creative for them. Maybe they've done it 35 million times. That's okay. The beauty of going to an expert is that they have tried a lot of different ideas and they know what works, hopefully. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get help from an expert. You can hire a coach, you can buy an online course, you can buy a book, you can talk to somebody like maybe a mentor or a coworker or an acquaintance or friend who knows a lot about these things. You can ask ChatGPT and do the exact opposite. You can call your mom and just kind of vent. And then ask her who she would recommend to ask, or maybe see if she has some ideas depending on what your problem is and how, comfortable your mom is with that subject matter. I mean, it really doesn't matter who you ask or how you get that information. You don't necessarily even have to have a conversation with the person if you don't want to. But just ask somebody who's going to be able to offer you a different perspective. And, super bonus points if they're able to offer you a perspective that they can back up by experience. Number 4, take a short break. Maybe a 5-minute break, go for a walk. Maybe a half-hour break, go get yourself a coffee or your beverage of choice. Whatever you need, just take a little bit of a break, go work on something that is not related to your problem or whatever you need to do, and come back, because sometimes you just need to be a little bit easier on yourself, and then that frees your mind up to work and come up with a creative solution. Okay, and the 5th one is go to sleep. This is some advice that I personally need fairly often. And I'm going to be the first to admit, going to sleep does not often solve the problem that you are trying to solve, but it does give you a better perspective. If you wake up the next morning, you're not quite as tired, you're not quite as drained, you have a new day ahead of you in which you can do the thing that you need to do and try to figure out a solution. And it really helps with your attitude, and helping your attitude is going to help immensely when it comes to trying to come up with a creative solution. Okay, so those are my ideas for the quick fixes when you need an idea. Make sure that you're also thinking about ways that you can incorporate time for inspiration and creativity so that you always have it when you need it most. Okay, I hope that helped. Let me know in the comments some of the times where you've had your best ideas.